So I am delighted today to have with us alliance partners Taylor Woodrow and Lend-Lease, who are going to talk about the roles of quality and design in the sector. Sit back, everyone, enjoy. I'm going to hand over to Angela. Over to you, Angela.
Okay, thank you, Caroline, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Design and Quality Virtual Career Chat. As Caroline says, we've been hosting these during lockdown to bring our service leavers and veterans closer to construction and the careers within it. So it is a pleasure to welcome you all nationwide. I do hope you are safe and well and looking after yourselves and one another. Now, the festive season is very much upon us. Just earlier this morning, we were searching for our elf on the shelf and trying to negotiate with our toddler who doesn't understand why he can't open every door on his advent calendar. So doors number 5 and 13 lost the battle, as did the chocolate buttons they were trying so hard to protect. And I defy anyone in the British Army to have won that battle with a 3-year-old this morning. So I hope you are all at home behaving yourselves. Now, this morning we are joined by 2 veterans to discuss their transition into the fascinating careers in design management and quality management. There are lots of transferable skills from your military service which allow these 2 career choices to be viable options for you, and we will hear more about that from them. So our speakers are Phil Sparrow, Quality Manager at Lend-Lease, and Momin, Digital Engineer at Taylor Woodrow. So I'll pass over to our first speaker, Phil, and we'll switch our cameras off, Phil.
No worries. All right. So I joined the Royal Engineers as a surveyor. I did 12 years as a surveyor. I then progressed from there to Clerk of Works construction, where I've been to all the lovely places that everybody knows about, so I won't go into that. As I came near the end of my time, as it were, once you get the resettlement, and I knew I was obviously going to go into construction, and I wasn't sure where I fitted in, because I mean I could do survey, although I hadn't touched it for a long while, or I could go clerk of works. But in the civilian world at that time, there wasn't really a direct transfer, as it were. I then did some. I spent some time with. I'm just trying to think of their name now, because they've now gone as a company, and I spent 2 weeks doing some work experience with them, which was on the rail industry, because I was interested in rail, and I then did 2 weeks work experience with Lend-Lease, which was in London, where I worked for Lucy Homer, who's I think she's the head of Lend-Lease Integrated Solutions now, where I looked at some potential design work for a project we were looking at IQL in London. And then I spent the second week at Ruskin Square, which was a construction site. We were building a 10-story concrete cord steel framed building, and that gave me the opportunity to have a look around site, see what roles were available, as it were, as in how my skills would transfer over into the civilian world, potentially as a construction manager or a project manager. As I said, my background is Clerk of Works. From that, via Angela, I was offered a role which was, I think, generated for me, which was construction and compliance within the company. My basic role or remit from that was to walk around on site, as I would have done as a Clerk of Works, see what was being built, and then compare what was being built to the specification of the drawings. And that's predominantly what I did, and then reported back to construction managers or whoever within the project and said, this is not quite right, because the construction manager within the civilian world on a project, not only are they dealing with what's being built, but they're trying to coordinate the different trades. So there's a lot of things other than just the building work that go on. Whereas I was in the fortunate position of I wasn't so much interested in program and what a trade was doing, but what they were building and making sure that what was being built was correct. And you can't necessarily trust a contractor to know exactly what they're doing, even though they're meant to be the specialist. I did that for several years, and then sort of morphing from there, because we were only a department of 2, I then came over to the quality team, which is where I am now, where I'm doing a very similar role of construction compliance, but I've also added to my bow, I'm an ISO 9001 auditor, which means that when I can go, because the company is ISO 9001 accredited, we need to make sure that we're following our management processes within the company. So I will go onto a site which is not my own allocated site, and I will look through their QA. So I'll have a walk around site and see what's being built, and get a feel for activities on site, and then pick perhaps a particular trade or activity, and then review their quality assurance paperwork. Because obviously, when you're building something, through the various stages, and if we took dry lining as an example, once you've marked out and you've put the stud work up, and you've put a layer of board on one side of the board, so you can still see the internal part of the wall, that part of the wall should be checked to ensure the fixings are right, the boards are right, the studs are the right spacing, and all of this needs to be recorded, so that should something happen in the future, it can be there is some kind of record to say, well, that wall or concrete or whatever the item is as it was built as it should be. So it's not failed due to poor workmanship, it's failed because of some other factor. So I go around and I do that, and the sites, because the company we have 6 quality managers, and I'm one of them. I'm now allocated to 2 particular projects. So I work in Perry Bar, which is in Birmingham, which was intended to be the athletes' village, and I'm currently at Glenparva, where we're building a prison, which I think it's a Category C prison for people that are getting to the point of being released. And again, I split my time between the 2, and I spend a lot of that time out on site, for want of a better description, roaming around, seeing what's being built, taking a lot of photographs. From the photographs, I then come back from site, and I will look at our EDMS, which is our electronic management system, which in the case of at Glenparva, it's Viewpoint, because it's a Ministry of Justice project. And I can then look at the drawings and the specifications to see that what I've taken pictures of and what I've seen is being built correctly. If it's not, then I highlight that through a report that I'll do after I've done my walk, and say to the relevant construction managers or package managers, this needs to be corrected, as a sort of a morph of how my original role was, of purely finding things that weren't correct, which, if on a complicated project, you can imagine that there are a number of items that can be not correct, dry lining being a fairly good one for problems found. I also note the items that I found where there is no problem, and through a report, I will have a report where I will take the photographs, I'll then find the drawings, I will mark up whereabouts the photograph was taken, I will then reference to the drawings, and if there's a particular detail, I will have that detail within the report, so that it could be seen to be correct, and by the same rationale, if it's incorrect, see that, oh, this is what's being built, it's not right, and here's the problem, as in what it should be, and correct it, as it were. And that's pretty much how my life goes, because I'm sandwiched between 2 different projects. I live in Milton Keynes, and I travel on a daily basis to one of the 2 projects that I'm currently on. I was working in London, where I was doing 3 or 4 smaller projects, but Glenparva, as you can imagine, a prison is a very large project, which I think it's nearly £300 million. And it's the same with Perry Bar. I'll go into a little bit of detail with Perry Bar, because that's a sort of an unusual project, and that's nearly a £300 million project. In the case of Glenparva, we've sort of designed and built it, so we have a lot more responsibility if things are not not correct, as it were. Whereas Perry Bar, the project has been split into plots, and there are 4 plots that we're working on, which it's a residential development, so they're apartment blocks of varying sizes and construction, and each of the 4 plots is being run by what's known as a tier 1 contractor. Tier 1 contractor is responsible for their plot, and we Lend-Lease are tasked with carrying out due diligence to ensure that they are building things, in my case, correctly, and carrying out the relevant quality assurance to ensure that there is an auditable trail back from the start of the construction to the start of finishing. The project there, because it's 4 different plots, there are 3 different contractors, and there are 2 methods of construction. 2 of the plots are building, it's a concrete frame construction with infill, which is SFS, which is a more heavy duty dry lining, for want of a better description, which is then cladded. And 2 of the plots, which are being done by a different contractor, that's a steel frame, which are prefabricated panels that are put in place with the concrete floors on each level, and then that's been infilled again with SFS and insulation, and then it's being clad with what they call corium, which are brick slips. So when the building is finished, it looks like a brick building, but it isn't. It's a steel frame building with a thin slip, which is about 15 mil thick on the whole thing. It's a quicker way of building, and it's more controllable with regard to quality, I think, as opposed to with concrete. When you're building things with concrete, you have to make sure that first of all you've got the correct reinforcement in the element that you're constructing, but also that you've got the spacing right, as in the cover for the concrete's correct, and of course that the concrete is to the correct standard. And when I'm on site, I will go around and look, as I say, see what's being built. In the case of the concreting, I will also check to see that relevant cubes are being taken for the concrete, and that there is a record of where they were taken, when they were taken, the batch from the concrete plant, that sort of thing. And then I can go back later on and see the records from when the concrete cubes were crushed, to ensure that they are at the designed strength or greater. As I said, because I'm also a lead auditor, between the team, we split the projects up, because we have numerous numbers of projects throughout the country. Generally, we don't audit our own site, because it then gives more of an air of transparency. Because if I was, for instance, to audit Glen Parva, which is where I am now, I know all the people here. I know the processes that have been going on. I would either know where to look to find something that wasn't right if there wasn't anything right, or I could choose to ignore that if that was my way of doing things, which it is not. Whereas if I go to a project I'm not familiar with, I might know a few of the people there, but I don't know the processes, I don't know the problems, and I'm looking at it with a completely fresh set of eyes. I will have a look on site and see what's being built and where the stages are. From that, I will look at things like contractors' management plans and inspection and test plans. And just to give you a bit of an overview of those, prior to a contractor starting for his particular package of works, and I'll stick with dry lining because I've talked about that already, they will have a contractor's management plan, for which we provide them with a template in Word, which allows them to give an outline of how they're going to manage the project with regard to the quality aspects of it, and who the people are that they're going to have working for them, and their qualification. It also gives an outline scope of what their works are, and also any of their accreditations if they have them, because they may be ISO 9001 accredited themselves, or they might have environmental qualifications. And we generally also like to have things like Achilles, which goes into anti-slavery rules and that sort of thing, and it shows that there is a standard set already for how they excuse me, how they will manage things. They also have what's known as an inspection and test plan, which again, it's that we provide the supply chain partner with a template for this, and this, right, it's not like it's not quite a method statement, but it splits up the areas of work or the stages of the works and what their intent is with regard to inspecting it themselves. And you have several categories where the contractor, in theory, should inspect 100% of all their works, and we as Lend-Lease would inspect a percentage, which could vary from maybe 10 or 15% of the works to all of the works. And then you can also have external parties that may come in to check things. And I mean, an example of that is some of the initial inspections that are done is you will have samples and benchmarks. If you've got samples of a product, say for instance you're doing an external area and you have a lot of paving, there might be a lot of conversation around what kind of paving slab you have, what kind of color you want, what the texture is, and the contractor, there will be a specification initially which will have been written by the architect. From that, the supply chain partner or subcontractor, whatever you like to call them, they will then provide you with a sample of a particular stone or slab that you want to be using, or the intent is to use for that. This will be then looked at by ourselves and our design managers, and I think Moa may go into that later, but also the client. So whoever we're building the building for, so that everybody can see it and they're happy with it. The architect, who's the designer, is happy with it, and then that would get signed off. And in the case of samples and benchmarks, samples, that would be 100% check by ourselves and normally by a representative from the client. Benchmarks, again, it's a similar idea in the fact that, going back to dry lining, there are different systems and different wall types that would be used within a building, and a benchmark would be that you would build a particular wall in an allocated area, and then that would be inspected, and you may leave the back off so that you could see inside the wall cavity, and you will then inspect it and say, right, this is what's expected, this is the standard that's expected, and this is predominantly onto finishes and things like that for that particular type of wall. Now, as a good example, I worked at Elephant Park, which was residential, and it was anything from 12 to 30-story tower blocks of apartments. And what the team did there is they took an apartment which was likely to be finished fairly late within the project, and they generated all the different examples of the dry lining walls. So they had riser doors, riser walls, they had bits with cutouts and everything, so that when the subcontractor brought his personnel in, they could then be briefed and shown this, and that would then make it more than clear to them what the standard was that was expected. Works, and that's pretty much done for most products and most sort of configurations, and it's the same with facades, in the fact that you will have a facade panel provided, and there will be a sign-off sheet on that. I think that's about it for me.
And I know personally, having worked with you, you are the most competent and well-respected quality manager in the team. So well done, you. Okay, so thank you for that. We'll come back to you at the Q&A. If we could ask Momin if he's able to switch his camera on.
My name is Momin, and I'm a digital engineer at Taylor Woodrow, the civil engineering department at Vinci Construction UK. So a little bit about my background. So I spent 8 years in the Navy in general. I was working for the Iraqi Navy while I was participating in lots of operation. Some of them are human trafficking, anti-terror, smuggling. Then I had the opportunity to get an invitation from the Royal Navy to train in Dartmouth and get my rank. So I did that, and just before my graduation from the Royal Navy, things went a bit crazy in Iraq with ISIS took over and the government collapsed, and so I had to leave because I was under a big threat. Then I came back to the UK. Didn't know really what to do, and it was a really difficult time. So I did work in shops and restaurants and bars, and to just adjust, I would say. Then I decided to study again and retrain. So I did a degree in building engineering here in London. Then I kept applying for jobs in construction, and I get a lot of rejection, or because I didn't have any construction experience. At this stage, I've been recommended to get in touch with Buildforce, and this is where I met Caroline and I get introduced to Buildforce. And since then, things start to brighten up. So Buildforce put me through a mentoring, I would say, scheme, and that includes ex-military or forces who are already working in the construction industry, some of them civilian, but also work in construction industry. And I get a lot of support from all of them, actually. Some of them just to lift my morale, some of them just to direct me and advise me towards what should I do next and how do I approach certain things. And while I was studying, then last year I graduated just before my graduation, Buildforce facilitate 2 worker placement. One was with Tideway. Then the second one was with Lend-Lease, where I spent 2 weeks working on with the BIM department to get some experience and put it on my CV. After that, also Buildforce facilitated a interview with Taylor Woodrow, where I've been interviewed by the director of the engineering department and a few teams where I get the opportunity to I got an offer to start working with Taylor Woodrow right in the spot, which I couldn't, just so grateful. And this is where I started to really work on myself and not try to prove myself to anybody, but I really have passion toward design and BIM and technology and in construction specifically. My role is to go across different projects. I worked on HS2 projects where I was reducing drawings, modelings, or where I was working also on the common data environment, and now I'm training I'm being training to work on the handover of one of the biggest projects where we implement a new technology or a new process. It's called COBI, to produce a federated model with all data to the client. It has been a year where I started my first job in construction, and I'm really enjoying it, and I'm doing my best to keep developing myself and do a lot of courses that my organization offers, and go to few construction events, and so far so good. So yeah, that's me really.
Okay, Momin, that was fantastic. Thank you very much for that. And if Phil can put his camera on. Hi, Phil, that's great. So a few questions are coming in, but I'll kick off first of all. So listen, thank you to both of you for sharing your transition. So that was kind of really, really interesting. And again, it's very, very different. Momin, you definitely sound as if you've been through it, but you're here at the other side doing brilliantly well. So it seems to have all worked out for you. So we'll ask some more questions just to better understand the roles. So I'll start off with Phil. So you mentioned, Phil, the benefit of work experience. So in your time that you were with the other company and then with Lend-Lease, did that bring the role of quality to life, or was it more just to cement that the construction industry was the right industry for you?
I think predominantly it cemented that the construction industry was right for me. I didn't have I suppose, a definitive line that I wanted to go down with regard to what I wanted to do. And it made me decide that I didn't really want to be a project manager, because I didn't want to deal with that side of it. And I was more interested in what was being built and what was going on. And because of I suppose the nature of my character, I like rooting around in drawings and specifications and things, and then looking at what's being built. So that, I think, pushed me down the quality line. Having had a bit of a remit to have a look around when I was on my placement, that then sort of cemented the idea of doing that. And then having spoken to Paul, who obviously who was one of the regional directors in London, and he said, I can see what your background is as a clerk of works, and and generated a position specifically for me using my, I suppose, my experience and my nature in order to get the best result for the projects and the company. And then from that, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, and just on that then, that clerk of works role. So did you have the ability or the technical awareness and the ability to read specs and drawings, or did that grow with you the longer that you were in the role? What was the expectation at that interview stage?
I already had a fairly good knowledge. My background is purely technical. I did mechanical and production engineering at college. Within the army, I was a surveyor, so I then, as well as doing site setting out, so I was familiar with that sort of thing. I was also familiar with design, because we did road design, drainage design, and all that sort of thing, concrete pads. Then as the clerk of works, I did a HND in construction within the army, which is more intense than it would in Civilian Street, because you do it in a lot shorter period and you do a lot more units. That then gave me a good insight into design of all aspects within building and plant management and project management, and you do a bit of facilities management as well. So I had a fairly strong background in the construction as per se. It's always a learning process, because when you walk into the civilian world, everything I'd dealt with prior to that within the army, you're in an austere environment. It's something that needs to be not quite rough and ready, but it's not necessarily using cutting edge technology, cutting edge materials and techniques, because you don't have them available if you're in somewhere like Afghanistan. So that's then given me the opportunity to learn more about that and delve into the specifications. With the wonders of the internet, you can also the specification. If the information is not on the drawing, you can go directly to the manufacturer and you can get details from the manufacturer on installation or what the product does. So for me, it's a learning process, and it's a constant learning process. And the more I do, the more I find, and it's ongoing.
And with that vast amount of experience you had, you said experience from design all the way through construction into FM. How did you know which career route to take, or was it just because Paul had mentioned there was a quality role available? Was it just a bit of fate?
I think some of it was a bit of fate, and when we sat down and discussed what he was looking for, and I suppose my strengths, I was fortunate in the fact that what he was looking for and my strengths seemed to tie almost perfectly together. In the fact that going around and looking at details and doing a lot of it where I'm working by myself, which one of my COs while I was in the army, when you have your annual report, said to me, "You're an ideal person to be locked in a room and set work to do, and then you just push it under the door." And I've developed a lot more since then, because because I'm not a massive people person. I have no problem in going out on site and doing a lot of it myself. And then I go back and I will speak to the construction managers or the package managers or even the subcontractors and asking them questions if I don't know something, if something's not clear, or if I find something that's not right.
Right. Okay. And just on that then, in terms of the strengths that you had, what makes a good quality manager? What do you think are those skills?
Without blowing with too much on my own trumpet, it's you need to have an eye for detail, and it's also you need to have a certain level of integrity when you find something that's not right, to first of all be able to confront somebody, not say, "Oi, that's not right," doing it in the right kind of fashion, but then not, I suppose, backing down when they say, "Yeah, well, it is actually right," because of the way I work when I do a report, and because we've had some very awkward subcontractors, and at Perry Bar particularly because of the nature of the contract there, when I find something that's not right, I don't give them anywhere to turn. In the fact that they've got the photograph which proves that it's not correct, and then there's a specification and the approved drawings for the particular item that's not right. And I'm as tactful as I can be in saying, this is not correct, it needs to be rectified, and sort of go down that line. And if there's a discussion, and you may need to go and speak to the designer or whatever. So.
And in terms of the approach with a subcontractor, so again, you're dealing with guys and girls that have been doing their trade for decades. Do you have some military skills that kick in when you're approaching somebody about the quality of their work, or do you think it's just your personality that's able to do that so well?
There's a personality. It's the ability to be able to talk to anybody, but I suppose as a military leaver, what you need to remember is that there's no such thing as rank out here in the civilian world, and you can't go up to you need to be tactful in how you approach somebody. And I generally won't go up to somebody and say, "You've done that wrong." I say, "That doesn't look right," and there's a bit of tact in there. So again, that's dealing with people, whether I suppose within the army you can be dealing with a more senior person, where you can't order them to do something because they're more senior than you, so you have to use a bit of tact and diplomacy. Just by the same respect, if you've got say for instance a draftsman working for you who is junior to you, although you can tell him what to do and that sort of thing, if you use your personality more than your rank, you get a lot more from people. And there's a rank structure which you have to adhere to, and it's that goes back to the military side of it, I suppose.
Okay, and one of the questions that had come in was just what qualifications do you need? So just taking it from interview stage, what impressed Lend-Lease at that time? Or was it just the depth of experience that you had?
I think possibly it was a depth of experience. some of it will be my background. I mean, putting aside the qualification, while I've been in the army, I've been involved in construction for the whole of that period, because I mean, as a surveyor, I didn't get any recognised qualification, because when I did the courses, there was nothing. You got a piece of A5 brown paper, or cardboard as it is, which is a certificate saying I did my class 2 and I did my class 1 course. Nowadays, if you do the same course, I'm not sure whether you get a HNC or HND for doing that, which I didn't get. In the case of the Clerk of Works, I've got a recognised BTEC HND in construction for doing that. You don't necessarily need those qualifications, because as I said, I already had those. I did management of risk. I did NEBOSH within the army as well. I'm just trying to think what else I did. And those sort of things, they're useful because they give you an insight. But whether it was a direct result of me getting employment or not, I'm not sure. It won't have done any harm, because it gives you an insight, especially NEBOSH, because it's the health and safety side of things. Because although I'm not a health and safety manager, health and safety is everybody's responsibility on site. Mm-hmm. And therefore, if you've got a good understanding of good and bad practices and how things should be done, then if you see something, you can stop it before it becomes an incident of some description.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Okay, thank you, Phil. I've got a few more questions, but we'll ask Momin to join us. Hi, Momin. You're right. Have you got your mute on? So just a few questions for you. The one thing that you mentioned was your mentors, the importance of your mentors. Can you just explain why that was so important?
From my personal experience, I always liked building, and I have appreciation for spaces and designs. I don't know if something grew with me since I was a kid. I just feel very happy that when I see a building going up, even though, constant war, it just, a lot of destructions, I would say. Then you see like a big building, or you just feel happy. And I think then I developed feeling for construction in general and building and all of that. But then I was 17, joined the Navy, and all of this not gone, but I was really focusing on what I was doing, and I also loved it. Then so I think the first few months where I signed up for the Built Force program, I met Major General Seamus Keir, and he invited me for a chat, and we had a long chat. Then I think he gathered that I really like construction, and especially the design aspect. And he said, I still remember his words, and he said, the UK has not been designed for the current population, and there will be a lot of upgrades for the railways, for a lot of infrastructure. So I think if you can look at that, and if you read about it, or see if you're interested in it, then started to read about it, and that's then bring me back the joy of seeing building going up, or a nice design, or and I think that's what led me to sign up for the building engineering, which is purely construction, I would say. So I think this is where it's all started. Yes.
Okay. So your mentor was a big part of that process. And what benefit did you get from your mentor? Was it because they were ex-military that it helped? Was it someone that just understood you?
It's mixed, really. Some of them, they were. I think at one stage, I wasn't, mentioned it, but I think they realized, my mentors were there. They were realizing that mentally I'm kind of exhausted and on the edge of giving up. And then they kept telling me their personal stories and how they get there, and how difficult it was, and I'm not the only one, and but it's a process and I have to go through it. Some of them helped me to get into the construction industry specifically because they are not military, they are civilian. I mean, they are not a veteran or ex-forces, where they directed me where to go, which courses to have a look at, and how to approach companies. Some of them, they helped me with my CV. Some of them helped me with my interviews skills. So I think it's one of the, if not the most crucial element of the whole Built Force program. I think mentoring is fantastic. To me, I mean, for me, it done like an incredible job in all kinds of things, yeah.
So you completed your work placements then, and you were kind of drawn to a kind of design BIM techie functional type role. Were you just drawn to that, or was there just always a passion there, or what did that look like?
It's a new technology, and I was reading a lot, and I've been taught in university that the UK is, the construction industry generally is way behind other industries when it's come to technology, but the UK government are investing a lot to for new technologies and the digitization of the construction industry. And I said, okay, well, there's a lot, it's kind of niche, and there's a lot of opportunities, and it's something related to where I want to be and what I really want to do. So I think this is how I get into that role. Yeah.
Okay, and there's lots of guidance and support along the way, wasn't there, down the design management route?
Yes, and so just to add a little bit, also on when I did the 2 placement that Built Force facilitated, I went through a different, I would say, division in construction, so quantity surveying, and project management and the design. And I just felt like, it's design for me. This is on my first placement. The second placement, I put on my CV specifically, and that I would like to get into BIM, and I would like, placement in BIM to just make sure this is the right career for me. And then Built Force, yes, facilitated the BIM placements with Lend-Lease, and then I realized, yes, it's 100%, this is where I want to be.
Okay, so for those that do have any quals or interest in BIM or Revit, the role that they should be looking for, if they're out there kind of surfing the internet, is it design manager? Is it design engineering? What does it tend to be called?
I think there is a confusion in the whole industry, but it's getting better. So BIM, it's a process. It's not a software. It's a combination of a standard and tool, and so it has to go through them to produce this. I would say a project, whereas the model is fully federated with all data and assets, and then the process, which it can start from, let's say, from pre-design until handover, which is a lot of documentation, a lot of standard to go through, and so it depends. There's different part there within the whole BIM environment. I would say there is the modeling part, which is what's famous. Like a lot of people, they think BIM it's about 3D modeling. So there's the modeling part. There is the information management part. So to organize and federate all the information in that particular model or the project documentation. And there is the coordination part, where you have to engage heavily with the architect, designer, and subcontractors to be able to gather this information. There is different part of that different part of the BIM environment, that if somebody is going to Revit, then obviously we go for modeling and probably federating and coordination. If there is somebody who is good at organizing data, then information management would be really good for him, because there isn't a national shortages or global shortages in the whole BIM environment. So there is a lots of opportunities, and especially now in the UK, the government, they even fund some companies to implement this technology on a process. So, and also, we have HS2, we have the second underground, and we have a lot of projects that they require, BIM implementation. So there is opportunities out there, and so it's really good. I would say it's a really good field to get in, because we're still early.
That's a really good point, Roman, that there are opportunities there and training can be provided. A question's come in from Kevin. If you're able to put either your camera on or your mute off. I think he's got a question about work experience for you.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, Kevin.
I have two questions, because Momus has brought one up. I'll just ask that first, if that's okay. So, and it ties into what Phil said previously, is I've served the amount of time. I used to be a technician, and I've done piloting and stuff, but I have no civilian qualification. So during my time in the run-up is that I'm going into a field that I don't have any experience in, a bit like Moman, and I can only educate myself to a certain degree. And I have an interest in BIM. I've been following that and certain aspects, and I'd like to go into project management. But what I'd need to do is to do what courses are recognised that I could participate in that would give me the current and industry standard knowledge.
So my CV has absolutely no qualification related to construction. Is only a degree in engineering, but it doesn't, because I don't have any experience. So even with this qualification, a lot of organization, they don't really look at, not a lot, but many of them, they focus on experience. So what I did, I said, well, I don't have the experience, and every interview, and I usually, have been interviewed like 3 or 2 times, 2 to 3 times a month for roles in BIM, and I just no, we don't have experience. So what I did, I signed up for a few courses through LinkedIn Learning, and I put it on my CV. I did a lot of them just to, it's good for my personal development. So when I get interviewed with the Taylor Woodrow, they didn't really ask me about the experience or site experience or construction in general experience. They look at my CV, then they did analyze what I've been up to and what I've been doing while I was studying or after my graduation. So they didn't ask me about what did I study in university. They asked me about the courses that I did online, just on Lynda, which is related to what I want to do. So there is few courses that I can email to you or to Caroline. There is Open University, and there is Lynda, which is a lot of companies now they are recognize it. It's LinkedIn Learning now.
Yeah, great. So I've done I've done 2 modules of that BIM on LinkedIn, but it's just about, if I didn't know whether I'm wasting my time, I want to be efficient in what I'm learning and make sure it's recognized.
No, it's not, because it's a good sign. It shows that you're really working and you're trying to learn more and to learn, to get, I would say it's the first step of the ladder. So you're showing your discipline, and you're trying so hard to get a job. And I think this is what I realize. A lot of companies are, trying to attract this kind of persons, that they are willing to learn and they want to learn. So I think it's a bonus to keep them on your CV.
Great, thank you. That answers that question. And just one more, if I just steal your time.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sorry. The other side of that is the work experience, and it's not, my the way our very experienced work experience is at school, when you left and you followed someone around and you grabbed lunch with them. And although I did a bit of work, I'm sure that's not the case when you go and do work experience. Is how involved are you in whatever they're doing, and so to maximize your experience, what is it you're doing?
So first, when I started my organization, they are aware I have zero experience. It was last year, and they said, look, these are the courses, these are the materials. We are aware, we are not expecting from you to design a bridge or to create a model at this stage, or so they allow me to develop myself and to train while I was working. So I usually get little jobs and try to engage most with my manager. And I think this is where I started, and this is how I built my experience. And also I wasn't focusing on so it sounds all about myself, but I wasn't focusing on one thing. I requested to expose myself to different parts of the whole BIM environment. As I mentioned, there's a lot of specialization within the BIM environment. There's the data, there's the modeling, there's the drafting, there's the design, and there is the coordination. So I allowed myself to look at all these parts and have experience and knowledge. So when I put them on my CV, I've been doing this and this and this and this. So this is how I think I'm building my my experience on. This is how I started.
Yeah, that's good. Great, thank you. Cheers, Momin.
Thank you.
And can I ask the same question to you, Phil? If somebody was to come and do work experience with a quality manager, what does that look like? What do they do?
Yeah, well, it's bizarre in the fact that my placement with Lend-Lease, as I said, was split into two. The first one, I was working for Lucy, who is the head of integrated solutions. At that time, the company were looking at some work between IQL and the Olympic Village, and they wanted that. I believe there was thought at the time that there was going to be an additional pedestrian bridge built over the railway track there, because the two are split, and it's a very busy line. It's got I think it's the district, it's the DLR line they have, and all the rail lines up to the East Coast. And I was asked to sort of not quite do a feasibility study, but to do a recce of the area and then collate a lot of the information which people had been doing as a hobby project into one definitive document, which was a presentation. So I spent the week where I went down to IQL and I took a lot of photographs and made notes about manholes and things like that, and various services and whatnot. I then looked at data that had been collected by other people and collated that, so that it was plans, it was what the intent was, possibly what the requirement was. From that, I wrote a paper which was a PowerPoint presentation, which was then given to Lucy, and I think she then sent that over to Australia because she liked it, and it then gave the powers that be, as it were, an insight into what the potential project would be, and what all the problems potential problems that you could have, and obviously the opportunities in the fact that you were going to be building a pedestrian bridge, which wasn't just a single span, as it were. It was going to be a fairly wide affair, which would have bicycle lanes, and I think it was going to have a bit of a garden and whatnot on it. But it gave them the insight into the area in general, so they could make an educated decision about whether that was something the company had an appetite for. The second part of my time, I was at Ruskin, where I was asked to look at the team and sort of the team dynamic amongst other things, and to just go around with the various members of the team and see what was going on site, to get an insight into the civilian construction world, which is what I did. So that was a bit easier, and I spent time with people like Julian, he's a ground worker. He's proper old school, I think would be the best description. Everything is logged on paper, so he will do a markup of all the pipe work that was in and all the checks that were done. He had a folder, and it was all very neatly done and all very diligently done. And I also went with another chap he was a graduate, but he was a civil engineer, and he was going around checking a lot of the formwork, that sort of thing, and reinforcement prior to doing pours on the cores, and seeing again how all that was logged, how he was doing his checks, using the check sheets that the contractor had for that particular piece of work, and logging and making note and record of everything that was checked and that it was at the correct standard. That I then gave a bit of a report back to, it was Paul McBurney in that particular case, and on what I've seen, what I've thought, and sort of I think where I fitted in.
So I think all that probably landed you the job. Don't know if your first week you did it alone or your second week, and I think that's a really good point in terms of it is almost like a 2-week job interview. It is your ability to go on site and to show just what you're made of and where your skills fit and what value you can add to that team. So I think work experience is a really good opportunity for the candidates, not only to show what they're made of, but it's a really good opportunity for you as well, Phil and Momin, to check in. Is this the type of employer that I want to be working with? Is this the right team for me? So do your cultures and your values align? So it's and we really value the work experience, and we certainly suggest it to the majority of our candidates to say this is a really good way to test the water. And I think, as probably both of you said, sometimes you're over here doing your work experience and you know that's not for you. You're actually better suited over here, and work experience really allows that to happen. So one final question from me for both of you. Kind of, what does the future look like? What does progression look like? Where do you think you'll be in 5 years? I'll ask you first, Momin.
So my plan is so to keep learning and in my current role, and I am planning to do a master's degree in design and sustainability, and hopefully work on my accreditations. But yes, this is the plan for now.
Planning for you, Phil?
I'll probably be still doing a similar role. I think I'll be moving on to Smithfield, which is a big development that we've got in Birmingham. Well, a particular interest of mine is passive fire protection. That was something.
Wow.
Putting aside what happened at Grenfell, I was sort of by default on my first project roped into it by doing a sort of a scope for the building and finding all the scope gaps within the building, and that sparked my interest in it. And as a result, I did a lot of reading into that sort of thing, and I'd like to get some kind of formal qualification so that when I speak to people, it's not an opinion, it's through education and definitive knowledge.
And I think that's a really good point. Kind of CPD is just continuous, but this industry is so vast and so wide, and there's so much to learn that you never stop. So thank you to Phil and Momin for their incredible contribution today. The disciplines of quality and design engineering are fascinating, and the opportunities are there. So it's certainly a viable option for many of you. So please get in touch if you have any questions on how we can help you take this further. And I'll pass back to Caroline.
Thank you. So I'd just like to summarise on the work placements as well. You know, we've heard today that work placements not only are a conduit to employment, but they really do help you determine or cement that specific career path. So then that leads to sustainable employment because you've discovered what you want to do. We've placed a lot of employment off the back of a successful work placement. Like Angela said, it's almost like a 2-week interview. So please get in touch. We can secure those for you. All of our employers are happy to offer them for you. So thank you both for today. Fantastic, as always, to hear our candidates' journeys into the sector and what life is like on the other side. And it's not that bad, is it? So that is a wrap for us. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying this. Happy Christmas. But just also to say, we have a really exciting schedule for 2022. I'm just finalising it. It will be on our events page, so look out for it. It will be on social media, so follow us on social media. Don't miss out. We have 2 of our live events scheduled for next year as well. The first one up in March in London, hosted by Jacobs, with 35 of our employers attending, so don't miss it. They are fantastic insight days, a really good insight into the wider sector and lots of knowledge in the room. So that's my sales pitch done. Have a lovely day, and yeah, happy Christmas, and here's to a fantastic 22. Thank
you everyone.
See you later.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.